So just to let people have less governance responsibilities, but to work in a represented, connected up way to make sure that it works well and that the arrangements for ministry mission and support are all working well, but then themselves and in their communities to be released to get on more easily with more time and energy and capacity released to care for one another in their congregations and in their communities, to love neighbours. And that's what my real hope would be, that actually if we go through this strange process of transition, if we work through our anxieties and come up with stuff that helps us all to trust one another and genuinely for that to be justified in the outworking and in the adaptations that we'll make as we go forward flexibly, then I just long for us all to be more released to do that which God primarily calls us to do, to love our neighbours, to show that God loves all, and to work that out through ministry and mission.
It's the wider working together. As we currently are, we are repeating so many things within our own current districts. And when we come together as a region, then we won't be repeating the same thing in lots of different places. We'll have one of this and one of that and one of something else, so that we can focus our energies so much more on the missional activities at a more local level or at a circuit level, that sort of thing, so that we're not kind of using our time, our very precious time, doubling up on meetings, doubling up on gatherings, doubling up on information. We've got it all available to share right the way across the whole region. That would be the biggest hope for me.
I don't think any of us really know what the Methodist Church is going to look like in 10 years' time. I don't think we really know that. I have a kind of idea myself of what it might look like. And it might look like a large number of very small societies that don't necessarily meet in church buildings, but meet in all sorts of other buildings, schools, leisure facilities, coffee shops, pubs, somebody's front room, you know, all that sort of thing. And maybe, you know, very small groups of people meeting for prayer, for Bible study, for mutual support and encouragement, for holding one another to account for their faith and their witness. There may be a building somewhere and people will gather on a reasonably regular basis. Large collections of these small groups will gather, you know, for Christmas and Easter and weddings and funerals and baptisms and high days and holy days. But most of the work, most of the worship, most of the growth of the church will happen in these small societies that meet, you know, on a much less formal basis. Really, that's my kind of view, I think. And my prayer, my understanding is that this district reorganisation will be flexible enough and will have enough economy of scale to enable that kind of development to happen relatively easily. The direction of travel at the moment, where we become smaller, I can't see us turning that around very quickly. So what we need is something that is flexible enough to be able to adapt to the changing circumstances as the future of the church unfolds. And I think this model absolutely will achieve that. So that my hope is there will still be a Methodist church in 10, 20, 30 years' time. It just won't look like the Methodist church does now.
I grew up in Merseyside. I studied in Manchester. I've fulfilled ministry within Lancashire, and I rather like visiting Cumbria. So I love the northwest of England, and the great relationships that have been built up over many years enable us to do much together. The boundaries that have existed have probably prevented us from doing some of the exciting, innovative, creative things together. So my real hope is that building on the great relationships that we have across the Northwest, the next step is to actually do perhaps what God is urging us to do, and to work together much more creatively.
I would hope that we would be able to do what is required and actually needed of a district, that we do not have the numbers of people able and willing and with sufficient time available to do the roles, because we have, let's be honest, been a declining church. So there's some of that. At the same time, I think there are quite a lot of things that, because currently it is happening, in however many districts, 4 or 5 districts, the same thing is being done, 4 or 5 times in effect, particularly in truth, some of the sort of connectional responsibilities. And there certainly could be an efficiency saving, or certainly an economic saving in only one doing it, not 4 or 5 doing it. So I think in one sense, I think both a more sort of effective and secure touch, if I can put it that way, but also to some extent a lighter touch that will release energy to allow us to do what we all want to do, which is getting on with being a church that is in mission, in God's mission in the world, rather than being seemingly diverted into, the pain, as it sometimes feel of governance.
I hope that we will be better connected, recognizing that we are a connection, and that is all about relationship, working together, being together. Clearly, there's an importance in realigning our structures, but the overall aim is to focus on mission and service and ministry. But most importantly, I think recognizing our connection, our growing relationship with one another.